So actually what the public and the council has noticed in the last couple weeks is that, and it's actually been a fact, is that we've been operating under what is essentially considered classic in this memo. Those aren't my words, but I guess that's what it's called. A 5-member council with essentially Commission President Cephas as mayor. And looking into this, and this is just for consideration, we are actually operating in what would be a more traditional system of government, where if you have a strong city manager, an executive in charge that's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city, this would actually proposal would have us consider, and it's a very long and formal process, moving to such a framework permanently. And I understand that might be something that strikes fear into the heart of a lot of individuals. However, we are actually currently in a non-traditional scenario. We have a weak mayor they are the what would be called the representative of the city, but they really historically a mayor, when government was simple, would actually be the chief executive and actually would be day to day, and it would be a full-time job for them. But ours has historically not. It's not something that, even though I'm sure that Commission President Cephas would say it's almost a full-time job, they're not paid as such, and they don't actually have any real executive authority. So the idea is to at least look into maintaining the current form of government with the council manager continue to be the chief executive of the city. We actually have a mayor that is elected or from within the council, which is currently what we have now. And I understand that that's something that the public has input into. It's definitely something to consider, but this is sort of this weird moment in time where we've had the opportunity to see how our city functions without an additional non-voting member of council. We have the same framework. We're just all basically voting members with the council president acting as mayor. So I thought it was at least worth discussing. It is not a non-traditional form of government. It is one of the 3 forms of government in the state of Maryland, from what I understand. The city manager has looked into it, and there's a number of cities that he's familiar with that operate in that mode. So that's basically it. I thought it was worth discussing. I thought it was worth bringing for council consideration and for commentary before we just immediately move to put back in place a system that may not be the most effective form of executive management and leadership within our city. So
I guess my question would be for our city attorney. What would be the process?
Legally, in order to do what Commissioner Roche is proposing, you would have to amend the charter to set up whatever other form of government it is that you want to put forward. Obviously, that would be some time before we get to that point, because there's a lot to consider and exactly how that works and how you want it to work. There would be once you introduce the resolution, there'd be opportunity for a public hearing, and then once it takes effect, it would be 50 days from when you adopt it for it to take effect, and unless somebody files a petition for referendum, which would have 20% of the or more of the qualified voters. So that's the legal process required, but again, I think there's a lot of work that would have to be done just to get to that point where it's ready to introduce.
I could go either way on some sort of change like this, but I figure if you're going to do that kind of change, now would be the time to do it. So I think it's worth at least exploring and looking at all of our options while we have the opportunity.
I think that it is definitely something we should look into.
I think it's an excellent idea to consider. I think now's the perfect time to do it. And I feel that, several years ago when we moved naturally to city manager form of government and having a city manager, I think unfortunately there's been a continued sort of push and pull between the office of mayor and the city manager, and I think if we believe in the city manager system, which I firmly do, and many of us ran on that, the job of running the city is too important to leave just to chance and election, and I believe that having a strong city manager is the most important thing we can do from a fiduciary standpoint for the city and from a fiscal standpoint for the city. And allowing a city manager to come in and not have that sort of constant pushback from a mayor that is now, because of the way our charter is written, has no real power, but certainly that office has been deemed to be extremely important. Whereas as a council, we've been the ones making the decisions, and that's not saying that out of arrogance. That's the way that the charter is written. So I believe it is a perfect opportunity to explore that, and I would be very much in favor of looking at all of those options.
So the charter requires that there be a special election held promptly. It doesn't specify a time frame, but I think obviously if you decide to introduce a charter amendment resolution that would obviate the need for that, we need to do that. We need to get that process going, so we don't start to delay any potential
Right.
election process.
Because generally you say sooner than later. Should this be a part of next week's work session?
I think it would be good to start having that discussion in more
Okay.
detail. That it sounds like everybody's at least open to the idea to start having more of a discussion about what exactly are we talking about. Or, for example, are we talking about getting rid of the office of mayor? Or are we talking about changing the powers?
Right.
You know,
right.
what exactly does that look like, and how would that, if you were to get rid of the mayor, what would that form of government then look like?
Okay.
Back into the work session makes sense.
And
Okay.
to clarify that this is a very standard form of government. We are
Right.
not talking
Right.
about creating our own government. We are talking about adopting a council manager form of government whereupon the council president acts as mayor. So
Right.
it's not
Right.
it's extremely important to clarify that this is we're not proposing something that doesn't exist. We're proposing on keeping what essentially is the framework of our government right now. It's almost a find and replace on where you have acting mayor and that becomes mayor. So I mean,
I think I read
for all
those.
intents and purposes. So
Yeah.
it's super important to clarify that.